Animal lovers, even the most squeamish of them, will find it very hard to say that a baby bearded dragon is not sweet. The only thing to bear in mind is that these cute little pets bring a lot of responsibility, as they will need the prescribed care and full attention in order for them to grow into a dragon that can be impressive. In combination of a calm conduct, an appearance of a dragon, quite a bit of color variants that are fancy, and a strategy of reproduction that even makes the rabbits jealous, and you end up with the bearded dragon. This perhaps is the perfect lizard pet. As they have gotten popular as the species for petting, so has been the demand for these captive babies to be bred as babies.
Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon to get notified for more amazing pets content. With that being said, let's begin.
Selecting your bearded dragon. Choose an animal who is healthy and well-bred. To start with, this is perhaps one of the simplest yet the most vital aspects of successful rearing of bearded dragons. While the dealers are not inclined to intentionally offer you babies that are not suitable for sale, it still does not hurt to be prepared with information on how to spot a healthy bearded dragon. The animal should get alerted and should respond to physical stimulus. A lot of baby dragons will just placidly sit on the palm of someone's hand, and that is fine. The bearded dragon should keep their eyes wide open. They should be of equal size, and it should not be showing any signs of any infection, like crusts, mucus, etc. You should also closely examine the mouth and the nails. If the bearded dragons are well fed, they will have an appearance that is rounded out. They should be plump, but should not show any sign of visible bones around the hip and backbones. When you are going for selection from a very large number of animals, first look at the ones that are the biggest in size and the most active of all. These are what are typically known as the alpha animals, and these form a wonderful choice. Once these picks of animals are taken out of the group, the smaller ones, the ones who assert themselves less, will very quickly increase in size and go on to catch up with the others in the group who are more dominant. Do ensure that the animal that you are feeling interested in is not missing any fingers, tail tip, and toes. It is very common for bearded baby dragons who are housed in communal habitats to have a nipped toe or a damage to their tail because of a cage mate. These injuries, though, are typically very minor and get to heal very fast and well with no problems that last for long. We would still advise you to stay away from animals who have had fresh wounds which have not yet begun healing. A license for the thrill. Even before you go out and start shopping or looking for your favorite pet, the first thing is making sure you are not breaking any laws. So, before you embark on the journey to becoming a responsible parent of a bearded dragon, you need to apply for a license by the appropriate department in your state government. No, do not despair over it. Keeping records is going to be one of the hardest parts of owning a reptile. How to feed these baby dragons. You will need to be very careful so that you do not end up overfeeding the baby bearded dragons. Overfeeding the baby dragons will put more pressure on the small lizard nerves and will result in paralysis of the rear legs and can even lead to a possible death. The baby lizards will eat a lot and will need quite a bit of food, but in the form of very small, frequent meals. Some of the things that can be good food are fresh molted mealworms, crickets, and waxworms. The insects need to be gut-loaded and then coated with vitamin and some mineral powder multiple times in a week. A layer of calcium powder needs to be coated every day on the insects. You should make sure that you introduce them to some vegetables a couple of times a day, say once in 2 days. The vegetables need to be chopped and given to them in very small quantities. Hatched and juvenile, both bearded dragons need to be primarily fed very small feeder insects, for example crickets, only 2 to 3 times in a day. Make sure you do not take a very large number of crickets, since they can overrun the tank and are also known to be biting. Also make note that though insects are tasty, they do not alone have all the nutrients which will suffice the needs of a bearded dragon that is growing. You will need to provide them with calcium supplements. You also need to start feeding them with grass as soon as possible. And this is not just for nutritional purposes, but also for hydrating reasons. It is very important that the vegetables are cut into pieces that are bite-sized. Quality pallets are also a very good thing to offer the bearded dragons at the initial stages. Some more on feeding. Bearded dragons are a species of creatures that grow very fat. Their metabolisms also grow at an amazingly fast pace. To ensure that they are growing properly, and to cut down on the risk of nipping off each other's tails and digits, when there are more than one in the cage, the baby bearded dragons need to be fed very frequently. The appetites of the animals will vary from case to case, but a common bearded dragon in the growing stages would like to eat eagerly 3 times in a day, with each feeding that will consist of as many crickets the animal can consume in a 15-minute period. This forms an optimal feeding routine that is very often used by advanced hobbyists and breeders alike to get their pet animals up to a good size as soon as possible. Sometimes it may be the case that the keeper cannot practically feed the animals with crickets all 3 times of the day. Fortunately, this rule does not have to be religiously followed. These animals will still do very well even if they are kept on a little lesser intensive schedule for feeding. The only thing that will happen is that they will have a slightly slower rate of growth. These baby bearded dragons can be given live prey 1 or 2 times a day, along with some greens which are fresh. There will be no problem at all. Always make sure that the food items are not very long. A good thumb rule is to ensure that the food items are shorter than the distance amongst the 2 eyes of the lizard. It can lead to a real trouble, sometimes leading to serious health issues, if you feed too large of a prey to your baby bearded dragons. If you are not absolutely sure of what you are doing, it will probably be better for you to feed them with larger quantities of small items of prey, instead of a smaller number of larger-sized ones. Also, make sure to not end up feeding mealworms to bearded dragons who are less than 4 months in age. Though this does not always happen, but smaller animals sometimes have a huge problem while digesting the chitinous and tough shells of these worms. It does make a lot of sense to dust all their food lightly with a very high quality of calcium and vitamin supplements. This is true for both live food and otherwise too. The calcium supplement you choose should have been completed with vitamin D3. Vitamin D3, in combination with proper light and heat, will be aiding greatly in the prevention of metabolic disorders. You should use this calcium and D3 supplement on every feed till the animal reaches close to maturity. This feed can be safely reduced once the animal has reached maturity. You should also use a multivitamin especially made for reptiles, although this is to be given only once or twice in a week. If you are giving your bearded dragons a good variety of fresh vegetables, then they will provide much of the needed vitamins and minerals to cater to the animal's needs. The usage of any additional supplements is just a failsafe if the food selection falls short in providing the required essential nutrient. Hydration is very important. One of the biggest problems which all the new parents of bearded dragons face has to do with dehydration. The water bowls should be picked carefully. They should be shallow, so as to ensure that drowning is minimized or eliminated. You do not want the water to be a life danger. Also, the water in the bowls should be changed daily so it does not go stale. If defecation has happened in any of the bowls, it should be changed immediately, before it becomes a health hazard. Now here is one expert tip. Sometimes you may notice that your dragon is not drinking water. In such cases, you can mist them with water so they stay hydrated. Hatching and the juveniles both must be misted until you feel confident that they are independently drinking water. Though they come from the dry Australian deserts, bearded dragons can also suffer from dehydration. When babies are small, they tend to lose moisture very quickly in a dry and hot environment. They need to be misted every day with water at room temperature, in addition to providing them with a shallow water dish. The enclosure contents themselves should be misted as well, and you should direct some of the steam towards the animal as well. Now this may lead to the animal getting a little disturbed to begin with, but they will soon come to terms with what is happening and will start enjoying these sessions, even looking forward to them eagerly. These steps are particularly more important for the newly acquired members and those who are under 4 weeks of age. After this point, they ought to be still served water in this way a few times in a week. However, it does become a lot less of a necessity. As the bearded dragon grows up and starts eating more and more of vegetables and matters that come from vegetables, they will need lesser help from you to keep properly hydrated. What about light and heat? You should closely monitor the enclosure for rising and falling temperatures. Baby bearded dragons can dehydrate very quickly due to rising temperatures if it results in too much heat. Always make sure that the animals always have an accessible basking area that is warm and also to areas that are cool in the enclosure. Adult dragons can be safely allowed to get comfortable with basking in temperatures that can go as high as 130 degrees. They, however, should be doing this only for very short amounts of time, as their mass gets to allow them to be warming up slowly. However, baby bearded dragons should not have more than 95 to 100 degrees of temperature in their basking spots. Never try to guess a temperature. That is what thermometers are for. When it comes for reptile use, never skimp on a good quality thermometer that is specifically designed for use with reptiles. A lot of good reptile keepers have observed that keeping 2 thermometers, one for each end of the enclosure, results in simplifying monitoring of high and low temperatures by elimination of the need for constant relocation of that single device. A full spectrum of light is required for maintaining most desert lizards for a long time. Bearded dragons also form part of this and thus do not make an exception to this rule. They need to be provided with 10 to 12 hours of light that is full spectrum. You will need a specially designed bulb for these purposes. You can find that these have traditionally been in the market in the form of fluorescent tubes specifically for such purposes. General tips on husbandry. It will do you a world of good to visit your library and pick out books that will help you in taking care of your bearded dragon in a better way, such as the Bearded Dragon Guide or Bearded Dragon Secret Manual. Check links below in the description. There are tons of excellent books written on the topic. Attention to detail is the key to raising small bearded dragons. Younger bearded dragons can be very sensitive, though the ones who have grown adult may be a lot more capable of not getting impacted by small bouts of care that is not up to the mark. Let us know in the comments below, how many bearded dragons do you have, or if you are willing to bring one home in the future.
Bringing you more value per minute than any other pets channel out there, or at least trying to. We would appreciate if you at least like or share this video. That would mean the world to us.